Hello, Power Up Gamers. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about D&D etiquette. As a player, but possibly even as a DM. You know, I advocate role playing. So I'm going to kind of go from that angle. You know, for those of you that are rules lawyers, and some of you know who I'm talking about, those that you haven't played a lot, don't become one. And what I mean by that is, how do you come at the DM about maybe you think a rule's wrong? You know, if you sit and just no, that's not the rule's not right. You know, you're going to probably aggravate DM, and I'm not saying it's always right or it's good, but you aggravate a DM, and sometimes you're going to pay for it. They'll get you for that. It's fine to question the rules, but be polite about it. Table etiquette, you really shouldn't talk over people. Somebody starts talking, just let them finish, and then you talk. I've noticed it works a little bit better, especially, or teaching people to do that a little bit better online, because you kind of have to. It's not so much like being in person. But, when you come into a game, talk to your DM. You got a question? Ask. Don't assume. If you don't understand something, ask them. And if they're not willing to help you or work with you, then you probably don't need that as a DM. You set up your character. We all want to be on time's a big one. And communicate. If you can't make it to a game day, let them know. I know a lot of us get frustrated out there because the truth is a lot of DMs put a lot of effort in. You want to keep that in mind. You don't want to ruin their game or run rule it because they want to enjoy it too, and so does everybody else. And, I've seen some of these players that come in and want to take charge of the game. And some DMs, especially ones that aren't as experienced, don't know how to handle people like that. Some of my tips to that, to be honest, is just, I know you don't necessarily want to do it, but just say, look, pull them aside, talk to them. If they don't want to change their behavior, then they can quit playing. From a DM perspective, I know, especially when I'm older, I don't feel like playing with you too much. I'll put a little effort in, but if you don't seem willing to want to change or don't want to stop behaviors that I don't like, I'll find somebody else. I'm just not going to put all this effort and time in and for you to make my day miserable or make me have a hard time. And and I will say this too, some of what happens from the school of playing D&D more like mechanics and rules is it's almost like it's the DM versus the player. And when you come into a more role-playing game, the DM is usually not out to screw you. If you got a DM that's out to screw you, that's a whole different type of game. And if you're looking to role play, that's probably not a game you want to be in. Because I'll be honest, I played some of those and I found some fun in it, but I much better enjoy role playing my character out, getting into my character, describing little details or things they do and mannerisms. Don't get me wrong, it's fun to have a fight. It's fun to kick some stuff's butt. But the story, I think, is a big part of it. And, if you're uncomfortable and unsure of doing something, ask the DM. Or, maybe get a little chance to talk to them and, see what it is they expect. And talk to them about what you feel like you need help with. Or even ask them, what do you think I could use some help with? Or what I need to work on. Role-playing, when you get a lot of good role players, you'll get a really amazing game. So you can get into a game and think it's really fun, especially your first time. And man, when you really start getting into it and start finding people that are really into it, and are really good at it. I talked a little bit about the Harbinger game last week that I was in. Man, I played with some awesome role players and a great DM. And man, that experience just, I'm still a little bit on a high from that game. It was just so fun. And don't beat yourself up. You're not going to start out that way. I think that's one of the things about Critical Role. As much as it's brought a lot of people into the games, I think some people have got kind of a unrealistic expectations. You know, you're not going to find that kind of group right off the rip. If you're ever going to find one like that, because, you know, you got to remember there's a lot of production into that show too. And you're talking about voice actors, you know, people that, you know, do stuff like that for a living. But you can find good people, and people are going to have a good time. And, you know, if the DM tells you, you know, or and especially if it's not a rule that's going to get you killed right then and there, I would, you know, just wait and ask them. Write it down, you know, jot a little note down, and just ask them, you know, hey, I thought this rule went this way. How does it go? Because the other thing I've noticed, and, you know, sometimes this can be frustrating as a player, DMs will have, you know, house rules. And they don't always communicate them the best. You know, I know I try not to mess with house rules too much. I have a few little things I do. One of my favorites is everything except initiative. Any D20, a 20 and a 1 is a failure or a crit, no matter what. Skills, whatever, just everything but initiative. But I try to tell people that. You know, and it takes a little time to feel out a group and get used to the way they play. And, you know, just remember, DMs put a lot of effort in. Players want to have a good time. You know, I've watched it before. Some players just, well, I wouldn't do that because my character wouldn't do that. Well, you know? And they would refuse to go where everybody else is or demand this and that, you know? And that's not good cooperative role playing. You know, I've dealt with a few players that kind of frustrate me too. It's like, well, my character wouldn't do that. Well, but what about your character growth? You know, I'll give you an example. I had a character that had a hatred for another race. And they basically wanted to, they wouldn't take any thought of changing it because that's their character. Well, you know, when you get into movies and books and you really read the good characters, they change. They grow. Or they devolve. But either way, it's, you know, the idea that your character is static is not a good idea. It does not create good characters. You know, I would take, and I know I talk about Game of Thrones, you know, but I know a lot of people watch it, so that's why I throw it out there. But you know, take Jaime Lannister. Now, they didn't do so much of a job in the show as they did the books, but you can really kind of see the arc where, you know, he was the bad guy, and then he slowly starts kind of redeeming himself. And by a certain point, he's more of one of the hero, you know, the noble knight hero that he was supposed to be. And, you know, that makes a much better character. You get into him more, you know, and the better you portray your character, the more other people are going to want to be a part of that. And it creates this feedback loop where you all work on each other and play on each other and just create a better experience. You know, I listened to another DM the other day talk about he don't even mess with numbers, or don't even care about numbers really. And that numbers are really there just to kind of adjustate things that happen and have ruling so that, you know, certain things can just be decided that way. But, and I somewhat agree with that. I won't lie, there's still a little part of me, it's a little bit of a munchkin that wants, you know, I want to be a bit of a badass. But I think you can have both. And part of that depends on the type of tone, the game you're in. You know, I've played with some people that stats, it's all role play. And stats aren't really that huge of a deal at all. And I've played with some that's a little bit of both. I like a little bit of both, but kind of how I look at D&D, I look at kind of like an action movie. You know, you may not be absolutely ridiculous things you can do. There's some realism to it, but, you know, if you want to jump off a chandelier and write it down and drop on somebody, yeah, that's what I want. I want it to be kind of like a movie, an action movie. I'm going to have a good time. At least the fighting part. You know, and then the role play, of course, you want a little deeper than an action movie, because an action movie is a little, you know, a lot of times they're a little lacking. But just remember, if you have a good DM, they're not out to get you. They're not out to ruin you. They're not out to kill your character. I mean, that's not saying that they may not do it. It may not happen. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is to tell a good story. Have a good time. You know, you sit and talk about playing with each other, you know. like I said, talk to your DM. Find out what the group expects, what kind of game they want. See if it matches what you're looking for. I can remember getting back into D&D and getting with this one group, and they kept talking about, it's a role playing game. We're all role playing, all role playing. Well, but then they kind of pushed me to want to be the barbarian because they needed a tank. Well, the reality is, barbarian is very heavy on. They talk about the three pillars of D&D: exploration, combat, and role playing. And the barbarian is really set up to be combat, not a lot of other things. That's not where they shine. And so you're getting me to play a barbarian, and I won't lie, I just went along with it because I was kind of trying to see how they were, and I hadn't played for a long time. I wanted to play, and so I basically had to sit around all the time while they role played because I didn't really have much to do. But part of one of the things that a good DM will do is there's pacing, and they put effort onto each character. And unfortunately, sometimes what you will see is that a DM will put more effort on the character that gives them effort. Which, I understand that mentality, but sometimes you want a DM that's going to want you to shine, that's going to ask, hey, what's your character going to do? It's one of the things I will advise to a DM. If you see a character or a player that you feel that is not being involved, well, why not involve them? What's happening? What are they doing? How do you respond to this? It's fine to role play. My problem with that group was the pacing and the way they role played. You spend 45 minutes on a role play, but it's with one character or two characters. That gets a little boring, and it wouldn't be so bad that once in a while, but all the time, that could be an issue. I think there's a big thing about finding a group that you're going to fit with. And especially talk about, it's part of why I play 5th edition D&D. It's just because percentage-wise, I find a lot more people are likely to play the way I want to play. You're more likely to find role players in that kind of environment. You go back to Pathfinder and 3.5, and you'll find some groups that will, but a lot of times it's combat and mechanics and more of the traditional dungeon crawl. Which, don't get me wrong, those can be fun. It's just not what I want all the time. And so when you talk about etiquette, like I said, talk to your DM. You have a question, ask. If they're not willing to talk with you, you're probably not going to have a good time with them. See what their expectations are. See what they can help you work with. Tell them what you think after you have played with them a little bit, what it is you think you need help with. And do they have any advice? If you're going to find a really good role-playing group, you're going to have to learn to communicate a little bit. Communication is key to teamwork. Well, the reality is, a good role-playing game is teamwork. And how you talk with each other and how you learn, it makes a big difference. People that are supportive, that want to help you, and not necessarily just tell you how to do it, but want to offer advice on things you can work on and how you can work on it, and willing to help you with it. And willing to maybe role play with you a little bit. I play on a game on Sundays, and I realized we lost one of our guys one weekend, and I realized I was relying on him to role play too much while I sat back and played this wise monk mentality. And so I even then I realized, all the experience I have, you can always learn and you can always get better. I'd say look for those opportunities. I know when you're new, sometimes you want to jump in and say something. But remember the table etiquette. Try not to interrupt people. Try to be mindful of DM and realize all the work he does. Most DMs are not out to kill you. If they miss a rule or something, just ask them about it and what their opinion is, or, how do they normally deal with that. If they tell you they want to talk about it later, or that's just the way they do it, then let that be the way it is. Don't argue because especially while you're playing, you really don't want to get into the rules discussion too much. That kind of pulls you out of the game, pulls you out of that immersion of role playing. That's why a lot of people talk about rules aren't first, stories first. It's because you create that vibe and that story, and so you don't want it to screw it up or bog it out with rules. So, Get out there and play, gamers, and have a good day.